Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from New Zealand, and I'm bringing you another global monthly video hop. So once a month, myself and demonstrators from around the world do videos based on a theme to share with everyone. And this month, the theme is Fun Fold. So I will be showing you how to make a card with a special fun fold. And in the description below this video, I will be listing all the products that I've used. So if you wish to purchase any, contact your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Or if you're here in New Zealand and don't already have a demonstrator, you can go to my website, michellekritchley.stampinup.net, and order directly, or contact me through the website if you wish to order. I will also be listing links to all the other videos for those participating in this month's theme of Fun Fold for the Global Monthly Video Hop. So make sure that when you're done watching my video, first of all, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and then click on the links to go see more inspiration for Fun Folds this month. So I am going to be using the products from the Storybook Moments Suite, and which includes the Storybook Friends and the Storybook Garden Patch stamp sets with matching dies, as well as the Storybook Moments Designer Series paper. I'm going to be using the one with the bunnies, and I will be using one of the houses on that paper. And for this, I'm going to be using the dies and show you how the dies match up to cut out some of the images from this paper here. And you're probably wondering what I'm going to show you. So here it is. So it's a Z fold or Z fold card, and it looks like that when it's folded flat, and then it opens up to give you a lovely scene. And the idea is that's what it looks like from up top. And I'll be using stamps and dies from both of those sets. And then this special bunny here, I created a little pop-out. So you can have the bunny hiding in the pots. And I'm going to do some slightly different than my sample one here. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I usually change it up slightly to give you more ideas. So I will talk you through some of the things I did on here, as well as do things slightly different for the new version. So here in New Zealand, we use metric, so it's centimeters. But you can easily convert that, especially if you have the Stampin' Up! Trimmer, because it has centimeters and inches on it. And I will be telling you the basic sizes to use, but if you are from a country that has different size cardstock, you might just need to slightly modify it, but it's quite easy to do. Okay, so let's get started on this one. So what you'll need to start with is your background cardstock. So that's a half a sheet. This is, we start with A4 cardstock here in New Zealand. So that's half a sheet cut long ways. So it's 10.5 centimeters on the short width. And then I scored it halfway through, which happens to be 14.85 roughly centimeters. And then the other, show it this way. And then the other side, I scored that in half roughly, and I think I did that at about 7.4 or 7.5, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't fit exactly. Now, that is typical for a Z fold, and then the front piece, you score exactly the same. You score at the halfway for the fold piece of cardstock, and then halfway for the other piece of cardstock. This piece here, I believe is 4 centimeters. I've got my paper turned the wrong way. I've got it turned for inches. So, yep, no, I did that. So I did that piece at 5 centimeters. And even though you've scored them both exactly the same that way, when you do it, you turn the small piece in front the other way around. So fold it this way. And then the big piece, you fold the center, and then that piece back. And when it's stuck together, it sticks together like this. Yep. and then when it folds shut like that. So that's where you get the Z. So you've got, I think that's the way Z goes. Oh, that's better, I think. And then the other piece, okay? So that's the basics for it. Now, because I'm doing my little bunny that's popping up in and up, which this has been pushed too much, so it's getting a bit wobbly. To do that little slit, my original sample, this one, I made up a lot of it after the fact, so I've come up with easier ways to do it. So for that, I did a slit on this section here, and I believe, let me get a ruler. So I did the slit halfway through, so that's like 3.5, so that piece is about 7 centimeters. And then depending on how big the image is coming up, you don't want it to be seen. So if you look at this, you don't actually see the line behind the bunny, you just see him poking out. So you need to basically measure the height of the image that's going to come out. And for this, I did it up, I started about 1.5 centimeters up, and I cut a slit about 4 centimeters long. So you could try using your scissors to do that, but if you want it to be a nice straight slit, use the extra end parts for the take your pick tool. There's a blade in there, so you can just cut a straight line there. And I'll show you how to get your bunny to move in a little while. The other things that you need are just some basic white cardstock to stamp all your images on, because this one I have all 5 bunnies and I've got lots of the vegetables and garden things stamped and then die cut. So you'll need cardstock to stamp all that on. For the back, to hide the mechanism on the back, I have a white piece of cardstock, so that needs to be slightly smaller than this section here. So I've got that white cardstock to hide there. And then I've got a piece of cardstock to use as my little pulling section. This is 4 centimeters wide, and I think it's about 10 centimeters high. And I've already curved the edges. You might have a tool. We used to sell a tool to give you the curved edges, or you can just use your scissors, or you could leave them straight. You will also need some crumb cake cardstock to give you the background ground section. So in the middle there, we've got the garden in the back and in this middle section. So these parts. And that gives it stability as well as gives it the 3D look. So you can just look through the garden depending on how you turn your card. I'll put that there and you might be able to see. Oh, there we go. So you want one piece to fill the whole back. So that would be about 14.8 or 14.9, and you can trim it off. And the height on that needs to be slightly taller than your strip for the front. So that strip was 5 centimeters, and I think I cut this one at 7 centimeters. And then I used the die from the garden patch. So the die I used from here, and I will use it again, is this one that looks like a little mound of dirt, and the 2 little slits there cut holes. So you can actually put your carrots, or if you wanted to do radishes, through. And so with this piece here, it was 7 centimeters high. So then I put that, cut it, and then I lined this up to the other end of what was already cut and put it through, and then die cut that again to give me the mound top. And then you need 2 stabilizing sections for the center. So we've got these 2 parts that help to stabilize the center of your card and give it some more interest. Now those 2 are in crumb cake as well. And they need to be slightly larger than your middle section here, because you have to have edges to hold it, to glue it to the sides. So this middle section here, I think it's like 7.5 centimeters. So I made it longer than that. I think I may have done this at 10 centimeters that way, and again higher, so 7 centimeters high. and then I scored either side so it will be exactly the same width as that section there. So I believe I scored it at 1.5 centimeters on each side, and I have 2 of those. Now these I'm going to run through the die cutting machine, and I'm going to cut the mounds. Now with this, I want one mound on one side, and then I want the other mound to be further on the opposite side, because if I put them both in the same spot, you wouldn't be able to see through. They would just be blocking each other. But see, this one's on one side, and that one, the mound, is more the other side. So it gives you a visual to look through. And this die here, it only cuts that width. So if you have any left over that you need to cut, you just need to snip it. So I'm going to do this off screen, but I'm basically going to die cut one like that. So I'm slightly over this score line, and then I'm just going to cut it straight across. And then the other one, I want the mound to be closer to the opposite side. So I don't want it to go over the score line. See the score line there? If I do it over the score line, the mound's just going to be folded back. So that would look silly. So I'm going to do it right here. And I'm just going to have the top of the die, sorry about bouncing the camera. The top of the die is just going to be at the top of that cardstock. So I will do those off screen. And then those were all, oh, and the last thing you need is a little piece of window sheet. Now I'm going to cut this down. This is going to do the magic for making the bunny come up and down. And so if you don't have, if you don't want to buy a whole pack of window sheets, when you buy your photopolymer stamps, I think these are both red rubber, are they? No, these are photopolymer. So when you buy your photopolymer stamps, they're not stuck into the case. They come loose from the case. And one side has a light plastic to help protect your stamps from dust, and the other side that they're stuck on is thicker plastic or a window sheet. So if you don't want to go out and buy a whole pack of window sheets, just use the window sheet piece that's left over when you get your photopolymer stamps, because you only need a little bit here. And the window sheets are great for lots of different things. So don't throw them away. When you get your photopolymer stamps and you put them in the case, don't throw away the hard plastic section. Keep it somewhere safe, especially maybe in an envelope or something, because it's easy to lose these because, yeah, they're see-through. Quite often I set them down and have no idea where I put them. Okay, so let's get going. So first of all, I've already stamped and die cut all the veggies, and I cut, I think, 6 things of carrots, and then die cut all the different things I'm going to use. So I'll set those aside, and I'll just show you here. See, you can actually pull them out of the little slots there. And so this one I had radishes and carrots, but the one I'm going to show you is just strictly going to be carrots. Okay. Now on this, my original one, I stamped and colored with the pens, the 5 different rabbits. But to save a bit of time and coloring, I'm actually going to just use the dies and die cut the rabbits. So move things out of the way. The dies that come with the Storybook Friends, you can get matching dies that are the Storybook Friend dies. And that comes with images that cut all the characters from the stamps. So we've got our 5 rabbits, a couple squirrels or chipmunks, if you will, and a hedgehog. So you've got dies that cut all of those. And then you have these beautiful frame dies. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, I have shown ways to use those frames. So I need my 5 bunnies. And so if you stamp and color, you can die cut your bunnies out. And so those are the other characters, the chipmunks and the hedgehog. But you can also, to save time, and if you like the colors, you can just simply cut the images straight out of the designer series paper. So as you can see, just showing you down here, these dies actually match up perfectly with 5 of the bunnies here. So I'm going to do that to save time. And the other thing I'm going to cut by hand, I'm going to fussy cut one of the houses so I can have a lovely house in the background there. And because I don't like wasting the paper, this is the edge of my paper. Even though the top of this house has been cut off, like the chimney's cut off, I'm still going to use this one. And I'm going to cut down, and I'm going to cut a little bit longer because that'll be hidden behind my cardstock. So I'll do that off screen in a moment. Some of the stamping that actually I want to show you another technique that I came up with while I was doing this. So when I was making it, I thought, I don't like the plain blue background. I don't have any cloud stamps or anything at the moment. But if you have a look, it does look like there's clouds. So as I was creating this, I suddenly thought, if I take this piece, turn it over, I can sponge and create an interesting background. So with the Balmy blue ink, not sponge, no, I forgot the name, the brush. I'm going to use the brush, but you could use sponging if you want. So turn it over, and keep in mind that you're not going to see below this section, like the last 4 to 5 centimeters. So you don't need to go too far down with this method, but I'll just move the ink up there. So I've got it turned over, and you can tell because it has a bit of a rough side to there versus the nice smooth front. So once you die cut that piece, turn it over and use that to create your cloudy background. So put a bit of ink onto your blending brush, and then depending on how you want your clouds to be, I tend to come off and just right over the top. You don't want to put too much blue everywhere, but you want it to go over the lines. And don't worry about the ink on the back, on this side of your cardstock, because you're not going to see it. It's going to be glued down. So just going over there, it looks like nothing's happening. But as you can see, it looks like there's clouds now. Okay, and then just move it over slightly. I might go this way to start with. And just keep moving it to different areas to get different look. And again, I'm just going over the lines of that section. Yep, didn't do enough ink. There's a little piece sticking out. I think I need to re-ink my Balmy blue ink pad. And you don't want to get too dark. And then just keep moving around different sections. And you're just going to give it this look of like wispy clouds. And so I'm just going to go over. And so you can see how I got different like stormy, wispy clouds showing up. And I'm going to just come back over here a bit. And so you can just add more ink, or I'd suggest starting off with light touch of ink to start with, so you can see how your clouds are developing, and then just carry on. And you can add more ink later if you want it to be darker or don't like the look of it. But as I go over with ink on the empty spots, it just kind of gives it a bit of an outline and almost looks like there are clouds in certain sections and different shapes and things. And it's just one way to give an interesting background without having to have another stamp or die cut. And I'm just gonna see how well I can do. Okay, so you get the idea. See how that's coming together? So I will pause the video and do the rest of it off screen. So I want to do it down to about this section here. Okay, and then I will also do the die cut and come back and show you how to put it together. Okay, so as you can see, the dies cut all those images out lovely. You do need to cut the paper down so it will fit in your die cutting machine. And then I cut the house out. I've finished with my sky. So see how that just looks like a bunch of clouds? It's amazing what you can come up with when you're designing a card. And then I've cut those two pieces, and as I said, it doesn't cut all the way through. So I've got one with the mound on the left and one with the mound on the right. So you just take your snips and you just carry on and just cut off the parts that you don't want. And then I can fold those edges over. Actually, I'll leave them flat because I need to stamp on this. And this section here, you can either do your snips, or I could have used the die, the straight part of the die, just to cut straight across there. But I'm just going to go straight with my snips. And so you can see how much blue is on there, but you turn it over and no blue. So now I'm going to stamp. And on here, I'm going to stamp, let me move the background out of the way. On the brown, I'm going to stamp the garden on the crumb cake. I'm going to stamp the garden. Now, I'm stamping everything in Memento because it's easier to just use the one color. If you want to use your Stampin' Blends color, Memento is the background color you want. If you're going to do any watercoloring, you would want to use the Stays On ink. And I'm trying to find trying to find the stamp I want. Okay, so I'm using, this is looks like a carrot patch, and I'm just gonna get a little scrap paper so I can mask off a few sections. So on the us, it does kind of sort of like a mound. It sort of follows the mound that you die cut. Not exactly, but when you stamp it, I just want to put some scrap paper on the back because I will be stamping over the edges. So I'm just going to put some scrap paper down. Ink it up with your Memento. And then you could start by doing it near the patch. Now remember, you're going to be putting some carrots in there, so it's not going to be exact and it won't be that noticeable. But so if you start sort of where the mound is, and then you can just work up your garden however you want it to be. Now keep in mind, these edges that fold are not going to be seen, so you don't need to stamp on those edges. So don't worry about what goes there. It won't be seen. But I can then do maybe a few more there. And then I don't want to stamp over that section there, so I'm just going to use a piece of scrap paper right over the part I don't want to stamp on. Ink it up, and also I'm not inking that end as much because again, I don't really want to stamp there. And I'm just going to stamp this, and I'm making it look like there's still a bit of a mound. And see, I haven't stamped because I covered it. I didn't stamp on the other carrots. And then the bottom part, which isn't that noticeable, but if somebody were to look down at the card, they might see that. I'm just going to ink the bottom part of the stamp. And just going to stamp it so you just see some little bits there. And then I'm just going to cover that and just stamp the end of my. Okay, so you have a mound of lots of carrots, and it's going to be folded over like that. Okay, now I could put something there if I really want it, because it does look like that spot's a bit empty. Let's see if I can manage maybe a little, just ink up the little end of it. Let's see if I can manage to get one more. There we go. So I managed to get one more little, sorry. There you go, one more. Okay, so I'm going to do the same for this one and for this background piece. Now, this background piece, keep in mind that 1/2 of it you're not going to see. So this half you're not going to see. You're just going to see the top. You're going to see that half, but you're not going to see below here, so it doesn't really matter about how much gets stamped there. And if you want to know what part's not going to be viewed, you can, this is the section that'll be covering it. So you could, you know, put a pencil line, or just, I like to just eyeball it. So I have some idea of that part is not going to be seen, which is about the same as there. So I know I'm not going to see below there. I'm only going to see the top. So I'm just going to quickly just stamp a little bit right at the top of that mound. And that's all I need to stamp on that side, because like I said, that's going to be covered up. The other side I'm going to stamp like I showed you. Okay, so once I finish stamping on those, then I color them. And so I went with Old Olive, Light Old Olive, and Dark Pumpkin Pie. And don't have to be neat and tidy. It's up to you. But I went with the darker colors as opposed to maybe like the Granny Apple Green, because going on the crumb cake, the colors aren't going to be as strong, because with the brown background you won't be able to see the colors. So I'm just quickly going over just the leaves, and then I will go over the carrots. You could introduce some crumb cake to go over some of the lines if you want it to give a lot of more coloring to it. But for this example, I'm just showing you roughly how you can color it. So I'm just doing quick lines. You could use pencils if you want it. You could use the Stampin' Right pens, which are water-based pens. These are our Stampin' Blends. So they're alcohol based, and they will leak through, so we want to have something underneath them so they don't go through onto the paper below. And as you can see, when I first colored them, they were dark and they kind of lightened up already. If you want it darker, just go over it again with the pens. And so I'll show you quickly. See how dark that orange is, and then in a minute, once the ink soaks in, it's going to get lighter. So a few of these areas I'm just dotting where to make it look like the carrot is just popping up. And the stamp set for this has carrots and radishes, or I think some people think they're beets. They might be beets, I'm not sure. So it's up to you how you want to color your background, but these obviously look like they're carrots coming up, but if you color them pinky red, you might come up with a different vegetable coming up. Okay, so I could, as I said, add some brown to that, but you can see that the colors slightly fade because of that, and they do leak through. You see some spots there. So you definitely want to do this before you stick it down on anything. Now, before I stick that down, there's one other thing that we're going to stamp. Sorry about that noise. And it's the wall. So that's going to be our piece that's going to hold the front together. And it's this wall section. It's a photopolymer, which again makes it great for lining things up. Now, on my sample, so I've cut the top of the wall so it's an uneven wall, which is quite interesting. And this last section, I made that into the carrot patch. So on the last section here, I stamped that with the carrot patch and then colored it in. And the rest of it, I did the wall. But this time I'm going to change it up like I generally do. The whole thing's going to be the wall, so the garden is actually on the other side of this huge wall. And I'm going to do it with a flat top. So this one, I made it look like the rabbit's just walking on the top of this wall. The stamp as you can see, isn't big enough for the whole section. So there's a couple ways that you can do it to make it fill it all up. And this sample here is how I originally did it. So I stamp the wall, then you flip the stamp upside down and stamp below the wall. And then any sections left over, you just fill in the little gaps. When you're done, you just simply cut along the top of the wall to give you that design. This one, I'm going to do it flat. Hopefully I can remember. And I'm going to do the whole thing. So, again, you want some scrap paper below. I'm sticking with the Memento. You could even do it like with the gray, with a shade of gray if you want. And so I'm going to go straight, and because it's photopolymer, I can see right through, and I should be able to get it right up to the top, hopefully. There we go, close enough. And then just carry on. And some of the images overlap nicely. Other ones, you just got to do it as close as you can. Or you could even mask over. So I could use my scrap paper, there it is. So I could even put the scrap paper over part of it if I don't want to have the full, all the ink going everywhere. And I can sort of line it up. I'll show you in a second. I'm just trying to see that I'm doing the top straight. Not doing a very good job at the straight. So it sort of lines up there. But when you color it in, it's not that noticeable. I'm just going to go and do this a bit quicker. And I'm busy looking at that side and not noticing the other side, so it's not going that straight across the top, but good enough. I can actually trim the top if I need to. And because of the curve, doing the bottom is not going to be that difficult. And you can even bring in a black pen to line things up afterwards if you want. Okay, and so there's my wall. And then because of the curve, I'm just going to go along and put the curve in kind of where the rocks are curved. And it's kind of hard to do this on camera, but if you look through it, you can kind of see how it sort of fills in that gap. The other thing you can do is you can do the masking, which I will show you. So if you want it to be more exact, get yourself, we do have masking paper, or you can just get a sticky note and stamp your image over, I think it might be easier to go that way, as much of the sticky part as you can. And then you just trim it out, trim it off. And you would do this the same with masking paper. So you just trim around your image best you can, as close to the lines as possible. And depending on how many areas you're going to stamp over, you might need more than one mask. But I think for this, one mask should be sufficient. And I'm just going to trim around. And I'm also going to bring in black pen to fill out any of those areas that I missed. So just trim close to the lines as possible. And I'm just gonna cut that straight there. Okay. So that's got the sticky on it. And what you can do is you can then put it straight over the image that you had. And see, for this, because I have an image up there, I need a second mask. And I should have thought of that first, because if you want two masks, you just stamp one image and cut two pieces of, cut both pieces out. So I'm going to put this as close to the top as possible so I don't have to trim as much. And there we go. And I'll use my second mask just to put over the top there. So on this mask, it's more important to have the bottom done. So if you know how to mask, you fast forward through this part. But if you haven't done masking before, this is a new technique. And it's quite a good one because you can get lots of images on your design. And it looks more like it's just one big stamp as opposed to the same stamp done multiple times. Okay, there we go. So that one I'm going to put up here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm covering up where I've already stamped, so any ink going there is not going to ruin that image. So now when I ink this up, and I could have done it on the top, I was just trying to line things up. So now when I ink this up, I can put it in that gap. And any extra bit there doesn't ruin that side. And in fact, look, it almost looks like the rocks have come together perfectly. And so I can carry on and do that to the next section. And the bottom part will be easier because it's all straight line. So do that again and try to fill that in and line up those lines best I can. And then we'll move over to the end of it and I will fill in those gaps with a black pen. So on this section, I'm just going to come in here and those almost line up with the two bits on that side. So I'm just going to see if I can line those up. And then the bottom is much easier because you got a straight line. So you just go along with the straight line on the bottom. See? And it just looks like the bottom of the brick wall. Now you might think, oh, wait a minute, you've got your bushes or they kind of look like bush. I'm considering them to be some sort of moss going different directions, but because I'm looking at it thinking it's more of a moss feature, it doesn't bother me. But if you're particular about that, you could even maybe mask that up before you carry on stamping the rest of it. But I'm sort of rushing through here for the video. And on the wall, the only parts I colored were the green parts on the wall. You could add a bit of gray or brown depending on what you think your bricks stone colors are, if you want. Now for here, I'm going to go even further over. Okay. There we go. So there's my wall. I chose to do the full wall, but if you wanted to do it just like my original card, this last section would be the garden. So see how there's like gaps there? You could leave that or you can color it in with a black pen. We do have a basic black pen, and you could just come in, you know, with some your own little rock shapes. You could even, you know, just color it in as if it were, you know, black hole in the bricks. So it's up to you how you want your images to look. But that's the nice thing about having the pens is you can do different things and add bits to your design. If there's any lines missing, like here, this isn't very dark, so I can go over these sections that I didn't ink properly and just make them slightly darker. And maybe put a little line there. And come over with a bit of a stone here. Because it's a stone wall, it's not going to be perfect. And I think most people aren't going to look that closely at it anyway, so it won't matter. Okay. I think that's pretty good. And then, just as I said, you just want to color a few things in. I'm going to go with the Old Olive and just quickly color in your little grassy, mossy bits, or you could just leave it as is. If you want it to look like a bush, I think it's just some moss growing on the wall. And just color them in wherever you see them. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so once it's all colored in, and that's my wall, and that will be the Z part of the card. So now we're going to be ready to put it all together. Okay, so that's the wall colored, but before I put the card together, we need to do our moving rabbit. So our popping up rabbit, and that's that part there. Get our rabbit to pop up. It says some bunny loves you. So for that one, we've got our 4 centimeter by about 10 centimeter high piece. I've already done the curved edges. Now there's a brand new punch. It's a set of punches in the online exclusives, and that's the one I'm going to use. Now this punch can go down quite far. So you can either be up at the top or you can go quite far down. And having done this in a card class, trying to line up where to put it was a bit difficult. So what I've already done is on the back side, halfway through, so that's 4 centimeters. So at the 2 centimeter mark, I just drew a straight line. And the nice thing with the Stampin' Up! Punches, the tops are always flat. So one thing, you can shut it, and if you slide the lock, it keeps it nice and small, easy to store, doesn't take up a lot of space. You unlock it, slide the lock to unlock it to be able to use the punch. But because the top is flat, it sits nicely on the table, which makes it convenient for one-handed use and to line things up. So quite often I'll punch looking at where it's going to punch that direction as opposed to this way and going like that, because I can't quite tell how far down on my cardstock I've gone. But if I have it upside down, I can see where the top of my cardstock is, and I can adjust it down slightly. So I know where the top is, where it's going to punch, and I'm lining up that punch with the, let's get to focus, there we go. I'm going to line it up, that line, with the center of my punch roughly. So you can see where the top of my paper is, and then I just slide it down slightly. Okay? So I can either do this here, or I can have it flat, and then just hold the cardstock where I want it to be. And press it down to get that nice, lovely little punch. My original one, I used a retired punch to do an oval there, and that retired punch will only punch that far down. You can't get any deeper because the way that punch was created. With this punch, I could even have it even further down, which is quite good, and anywhere else I want. So that's quite a great little punch. I will have in the description the name of it. I don't remember the name at the moment. It comes with a set of 3 in the new online exclusives. So get that punched out, and then I did about 5 centimeters, which is about 2 inches of ribbon. And so cut the ribbon. This is in the suite, and this ribbon is the scalloped ribbon in petal pink. And once you have that, just slip it through. Actually, I should stamp first before I do that. So I'm going to stamp the Some Bunny Loves You, and because I didn't grab another color, I'm just going to go with the Balmy Blue. And you want to stamp this after you put your hole in, so you know where it's going to go, because otherwise you might have it too far down or too far up. There we go. That's quite cute. And now I'm going to put my ribbon in, and I'm going to use tear and tape to stick it down so it stays nice and firm. I don't have to worry about tying a knot or anything. So I'm just going to put a bit of tear and tape on one side of my ribbon. And if you're using stuff like ribbon, tape or glue dots are best to use, because if you use liquid glue, it can leak through the ribbon because it's porous, and it can also discolor your ribbon. So I'm just going to pull that up, line up the top bits, and there. So that's my mechanism for the back. Now, get my blue piece over here. And what you want to do is you want to have your window sheet. There's my window sheet there. And you don't want it to be too wide, but about the same width or maybe slightly smaller than what you're going to be pulling up. So I just cut that there. And again, with window sheets, same as like with ribbon, glue dots or tape is best, because liquid adhesive doesn't work very well with it. Now, I'm going to be pulling up this bunny. So part of it's going to stick behind him, and part of it's going to be sticking on the card. And when it pulls up, you're going to see it. So I think that might be too wide of a piece. So I'm just going to cut that a bit narrower. And I'm going to put some tear and tape, but I'm not going to peel it off. Just on one side of it. So like on half of it, I'm going to have tear and tape. Okay. So that's half with the tear and tape is going through the hole. So the tear and tape is now that direction, okay? So slide it down, all the way down to the bottom. So this is the back of your card, all the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to peel that off. And make sure your tape doesn't overlap, because you don't want it to make your plastic stick anywhere. So just peel your backing off. Making sure there's nothing sticking over the side, and you don't want it to stick to that middle, but I want it slid